Hey there and welcome back to XCOM 2. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Legend Ironman walkthrough of XCOM 2 War of the Chosen. Last time we left off after an Advent retaliation mission that honestly went better than expected. We had another run-in with chrysalids, learned some of their erratic behavior and still somehow made it out alive without taking a single scratch of damage. Near the end of the episode, we also unlocked plasma weapons, the highest tier of weapons in the game, and you can see it in the bottom right corner. We are about to have our very first Psi Operatives, so let's start scanning and find out what Esteban Flores and Matt Lewin have turned into. Alright, so there we are. The psionic training for our two rookies has been completed. They now both gain the rank of Initiate, and as you can see, they also both gain the same starting ability in Stasis. Now, I have mentioned this before, leveling up Psi Operatives works a little bit differently. Instead of gaining experience from combat in the field, they gain experience through training, which can thankfully be started, interrupted, and then picked back up with no loss of progress. Every time we assign a Psi Operative to training, they have 3 abilities to choose from, and these are selected somewhat randomly. They technically do correspond to Psi Operative ranks or levels, which you can also see by the training days. A longer training time means it's a higher ranking ability. Now, before we make a choice here, we want to take a look at both our Psi Operatives to see what they have available. Esteban Flores, for example, has Soulfire, a guaranteed damage-dealing ability ignoring cover and armor. Doesn't do the most damage, but it's a nice panic button if you just need to hit something. Fuse then would allow him to remotely detonate explosives carried by our enemies, which is of course somewhat situational as it requires enemies to be carrying explosives in the first place, so in my opinion it's a little less versatile and definitely not as useful early on. Finally, we have Void Rift, probably the most powerful ability of the 3, an area of effect ability with a fairly large area of effect that deals guaranteed damage and also has a chance to inflict panic on all targets, although that power does come at the cost of a 6-turn cooldown. Quickly taking a look at Matt Lewin then, we can see he also has Void Rift available, as well as Solace and Domination. Solace, a defensive-minded ability protecting from mental impairments. The most prominent cases here would be Mind Control or Panic. In my opinion, moderately useful. As you know, I think most of the time a good offense is the best defense. Domination then, the ability to permanently mind control an enemy. Not all enemy units are viable targets, but most of them are. And yes, this can be as powerful as it sounds, and therefore can also only be used once per mission. And I think it's the one we'll go with, so Matt Lewin starting out as the Dominator, while Esteban Flores will become more of a damage dealer. We will give him Soulfire, no, not Void Rift just yet. It might be the better of the 2 abilities, but Soulfire can actually be upgraded, and I would like to show that off as soon as I can. So, our 2 Psi Operatives continue training, but like I said, we can pull them out anytime, and they will not lose any progress made towards their next abilities.
We are victorious, and the cause is advanced.
Alright, there we are. We have finally hunted down the Chosen Hunter. That means we have now unlocked the Chosen Stronghold mission and can finally attack our very first Chosen and take them out of the picture.
Our strength against the Chosen grows just as our knowledge of them does.
And yes indeed, the mission to strike the Chosen Stronghold for the Hunter is now available, and I think we want to do that right away. It has been a long time coming. It's time to take the Hunter out for good.
If we want to take out the Chosen once and for all, we should move to strike their stronghold. The Resistance has found our access point. We just have to make use of it.
And make use of it we will. We have a pretty good squad together, I think. Most of our soldiers have returned from tiredness or their other occupations, so we will be able to field a high-level squad.
Avenger plotting new course.
And yes, we are informed here that we will not get another shot at taking out this Chosen if we do not succeed, so we should make sure that we send out a capable squad, and like I said, most of our high-ranking soldiers are ready to go, so let's see what we can put together. Right, now before we get going, a quick jump over to the training center, because I think this mission calls for a few extra abilities. Starting us out is Alyssa Sapphire West, our sharpshooter. As you can see, we have 26 AP to spend here, and we'll use them to first unlock Quick Draw and then Face Off. Quick Draw allows her to fire her pistol twice per turn, and I know, yes, she is more of a sharpshooting sniper, or a sniping sharpshooter for that matter, but this ability is just immensely useful, having a bit more flexibility with the pistol. Very, very useful in those situations where the sniper rifle is simply not the best choice. Face-Off then just adds onto that flexibility. Every 3 turns we are now able to fire once at every visible enemy with the pistol, and considering that we have just unlocked the plasma pistol, this is once again immensely valuable. Moving on then, we have Dragonova, our Reaper. Some of you have already pointed out in the comments that the ability Banish would be extremely useful in certain missions, this one being one of them, and I have to agree, we will now grab the ability to fire at a target until we run out of ammo or it dies. The tooltip here already says it, an expanded magazine might make this ability a little bit more powerful, so obviously that is what we will slap onto her weapon before we send her out into the field. The ability then also costs us 14 ability points, 7 more than she has, so we're spending a few from the XCOM pool, but as you can see, we still have plenty to spare. Continuing then, JQT Lind will make a return on this mission, and again, some of you have pointed this out, both the abilities Rapid Fire as well as Chain Shot would be immensely useful. Now, Rapid Fire, in my opinion, is clearly the better of the 2 abilities, because in this case, the second shot is not dependent on the first. With Chain Shot, you need to hit the first shot with the aim penalty of -15, and only then will you take a second shot, while with Rapid Fire, the second shot is guaranteed to be taken. Here, the question is simply whether or not both of them hit, as they both suffer the -15 aim penalty. Still, the potential damage output of Rapid Fire is definitely bigger. Unfortunately, so is the ability point cost, as you can see it in the bottom right, 25 AP, the hefty price tag for Rapid Fire. Chain Shot, meanwhile, only 13, so I think we'll go with Chain Shot here, which requires us to guarantee that the first shot always hits, but with a scope, tracer rounds, and perhaps some high ground, we should be able to achieve that. And with that, we have now already covered 3 of our soldiers for today. Let's take a look at the full squad now. As you can see, this is one of the best squads we are able to field. Praetor Mox, the only soldier of lieutenant rank, everyone else definitely above that, and Mox is mainly also here for storyline reasons, as the Hunter is the designated enemy of the Skirmisher faction. Mox, Dragonova and Sapphire West are then also all equipped with blue screen rounds, those might come in handy, while as promised Grenadier QT Lind has tracer rounds and a superior scope equipped, and she's also carrying the recently unlocked Shredder gun. Dragonova then leading the squad, her scouting abilities will most likely once again come in handy, and of course she does have a superior expanded magazine equipped. Ranger Starfall then, our primary damage dealer, also carrying Mimic Beacon and Frost Bomb. Van Dyke then with a medkit, yes, this mission might just prompt us to use one, and also with the Skulljack, but mainly to increase his hacking stat. This should at least allow him to shut down all enemy mechs with a 100% success chance. Sapphire West then we already talked about, but before we go, let's purchase some of those plasma weapons we recently unlocked. We unfortunately do not have the funds to purchase the beam pistol, the bullpup and the plasma rifle. As you can see, the plasma rifle alone already costs 350 supplies, 35 alloys and 50 Elerium crystals, but we definitely want to grab the bullpup as well as the beam pistol. The plasma rifle would only go on our specialist anyway, and at least compared to Mox and Sapphire West, Van Dyke is just not as much of a damage dealer. Both weapons are then once again also immediately applied and weapon upgrades are transferred over. The minimum damage output of the new bullpup now 6 points of damage, so if he fires twice per turn, Mox can wreak a good amount of havoc. The same will be true for Sapphire West. The plasma pistol obviously benefits tremendously from the 2 abilities we just purchased. And with that, I think we're good to go. Let's head out and take down the Hunter.
Time for us to finally take the fight to the Chosen themselves. Intel on this facility is almost non-existent. In fact, you may be the first human beings to step foot inside these walls. This may not be the most ideal situation, but it could be our only chance to take one of these things out. Good luck, and be careful. Okay, people. Stay alert and remember why you're here. That thing dies today, no matter what it takes.
Detecting a strong energy signature further ahead in the facility. There is no doubt in my mind that it is from the Chosen.
Then that's where we need to be.
I was hoping you might take a little longer to find this place. Things were just starting to get interesting between us. Now, you're already dead.
Now, as you can see, we start things off in a room that we have apparently just breached. We also have doors ahead of us and can also take at least a small glimpse into the room behind them. We also have another exit at the opposite end of the room, but this here is where we will go first, I think. And of course, we will have to do so without concealment, except for our Reaper. Dragonova is of course cloaked as always, and can therefore scout ahead and open the door.
Well, we weren't expecting to sneak in here today. Let's take these things out.
That reveals our first enemies of the mission, a sectoid and a spectre with a respectable 25 hit points, so yes, even the spectres are getting stronger. Now, chances are these enemies will move, and they are just at the edge of our sight range, so we are setting things up as we always do for the Overwatch ambush. Mox and West grab the high ground, the rest just goes behind cover. Let's see if we can catch our enemies off guard.
Okay, I'll go.
My turn on
I'm on it.
Affirmative, cover now.
Come again, sir.
And indeed, they make a move, and it's a move towards us, which should hopefully trigger the first reaction shot here in just a second. And just as I had hoped, Cutie Lind fires first and at the Spectre too, which means we now have holo targeting for the remainder of our shots against it.
Muss besser zielen.
As you can see though, holo targeting does not seem to be of that much use here today. So far, everyone has missed their shots, and that unfortunately also includes Alyssa West, whose shot would have actually hit for a change if it weren't for lightning reflexes.
In case you're wondering if I've left some surprises for you along the way, the answer is yes. Think of it as a warm-up before the main event.
So, an Overwatch ambush that results in exactly 0 points of damage being dealt. Thankfully, it's only 2 enemies, and one of them is vulnerable to blue screen rounds, so I think we should be fine. So, first things first, let's move Dragonova to keep her hidden, and then we get Van Dyke into a flanking position. He's got a guaranteed hit from here with a good crit chance as well. Unfortunately though, this time around he is without blue screen rounds. Still, he gets 8 points of damage and an ability point. Let's add on to that with Grenadier QT, who despite the Spectre's full cover still has an 85% hit chance. And again, even if the shot misses, the thing we are most concerned about is holo targeting.
Missed.
And I guess it's a good thing we did not care too much about the hit. Holo targeting, however, was applied. That sadly does not last through the Overwatch, and that also means that Sapphire West with blue screen rounds now has a guaranteed sniper shot. 12 points of damage and an ability point. Lovely. Now, how we finish up this turn depends on whether or not Starfall can kill the sectoid in one go. He is normally pretty good at this, but it's best not to rely on him too much.
Got it, right?
However, Starfall does not disappoint and also gets the implacable movement, perhaps to move back a bit, as this room here does not actually seem to have an exit. Either way, this now also means that Dragonova can safely kill the Spectre and remain hidden in the process.
Volk says hello.
Now, like I said, looking around the room here, you can see that it's a dead end, which means we have no other choice but to go back the way we came and then exit through the other side. Of course, especially on a mission like this, we do not want to advance without our Reaper spearheading the operation, so even though Mox here still has a full turn to move, we will just reload and then go on Overwatch.
I am watching.
Thankfully, this mission does not have a timer.
I'd like to say you're walking into some sort of elaborate trap, but then I'd be lying. To be honest, I never thought anyone would ever walk into this place voluntarily.
So the Chosen teasing us a bit, but we have our path forward mapped out, so let's get going and see what Dragonova can find. Alright, looks nice and empty so far, but then again we don't have too much visibility. What we can see over on the side here are seemingly some holding cells. Very fitting, since, as you know, all 3 Chosen are very keen on capturing soldiers. Presumably this right here is where they're put to be interrogated. After allowing the rest of our squad then to catch up with our Reaper, we once again end the turn on Overwatch. After all, we still have a long fight ahead of us, and we do not want to take any unnecessary risks early on.
Under my watch. I suppose this is as good a time as any to start testing the defenses. I have to say, I'm rooting for you. These things aren't the best conversationalists.
So, let's start scouting things out. We have some convenient high ground on top of those holding cells. And after the first move does not reveal anything, we keep going all the way to the end. That reveals 2 more doors, one to the right and one ahead of us. So far though, no enemies in sight, so let's keep pulling up the rest of our squad. This time I think we can safely dash, no need for overwatches this round.
This game was a lot more fun when you followed the rules. Well, if you're not going to play nice, neither will I.
Okay, so here we are, 2 doors ahead of us. The question is which one to pick, and I think let's start with the one that's closest. So, somewhat surprisingly, still nothing. No enemies in sight, but we have plenty of weapon racks, which is quite fitting for the hunter, I think. There also might be another door over on the left side here, at least it looks like there's a room behind it. Apart from that, however, nothing noteworthy. So let's keep moving. This time though, we'll make sure to keep our people in overwatching positions. Once again, there is absolutely no reason to rush anything.
I am on watch. Overwatch. Permanent. Now.
I should probably start going on and on now about how I will defeat you for the glory of the Elders. But let's be real. I just like to kill things.
Alright, at the very least the hunter is honest, but at the moment he doesn't do much more than talk. We meanwhile are still looking for enemies, and since the first door did not reveal anything, let's try the second.
The target is marked.
Alright, a Spectre and 3 Vipers, finally some enemies, but still nothing too challenging. The room itself then has a lot of Advent soldiers lying around, either dead or undergoing some sort of procedure. Either way, they are thankfully no threat to us and never will be. The room also once again has an exit over on the right side, so that is where we will need to go, either through here or through the room that we discovered earlier. With our enemies standing so close to the door then, I think our safest bet would be to pull Dragon over back a bit, and then we just activate overwatches and see if our enemies get closer. Right, doesn't look like that's the case, so we might just have to come to them.
And let's not forget the sweet deal they cut us. I take you out, and this world is mine. Think of all the fun we'll have.
Now, as you can see, our enemies did not really advance too far. Still, let's play it safe, just 1 or 2 tiles further and we can unleash. So let's use the time we have here to get in reloads for those who need them, and then go on Overwatch once more.
I'll watch close.
And there we are, all it takes is a bit of patience. Van Dyke's reaction shot here then also hits and triggers Guardian, which means in just a moment he is about to fire a second time, and if that shot hits, then Guardian might very well trigger again. Alright, this time around a slightly better round of overwatches than last time. Still, 3 of the 4 enemies are still standing, 2 of them with full health. With 2 of those only being Vipers though, I think that's manageable. That is if it weren't for this group right here showing up in the other room. An Andromedon, a Shield Bearer, a Purifier and a Lancer. We definitely do not want to face these on top of the 3 enemies we are currently already engaged with.
You weren't going to win this war anyway. And imagine how bad you'd feel watching the Elders tear this world apart. I'm doing everyone a favor.
Now, this does look dicey, but on the bright side, the 4 enemies on the right here have not yet detected us. The only one who can currently spot them is our Reaper, and for some reason we also do not reveal our position if we now send that Reaper forward to close the door on them.
They have a patrol moving here.
Doing so then also reveals even more enemies, 2 mechs and a Shield Bearer, so we definitely want to shut these doors and keep them all out of sight. And that means we can now focus all of our attention on the 2 Vipers and the Spectre, starting with Sapphire West, with whom a pistol shot is already enough to take the Spectre out.
Target eliminated.
And thanks to Quick Draw, she can now even fire again. And despite half cover, the Viper in the back here is a guaranteed target. Speaking of guarantees, Grenadier QT is now guaranteed to get the kill. While Mox can move down to flank the other Viper. He even crits, but that's still not enough for the kill. Let's send down Ranger Starfall to finish the job.
Check it before you get too close.
Lovely, that trigger's implacable, so let's move Starfall to the door here, just in case we can't trigger Blade Storm if our enemies decide to move through. Everyone else who still has movement can then reposition a bit as well. At this point, thankfully, we know exactly where our targets will be coming from. This here also the lovely thing about targets being marked by our Reaper. The door may be closed, but we know exactly where they're going.
Oh, but I get it. You will do what is needed. You will never give up the fight, for you are XCOM, and you are going to die.
Okay, so similar situation to the last fight, only that this time around the door is completely closed. But time is on our side, and who's to say that they don't eventually come through? So I think we are just going to lay low, reload, overwatch, and hope that in a round or two, or maybe three, they eventually stumble right into our reaction fire.
Watching comes naturally.
I often wonder, Commander, if you told them what you saw in the Elder's Chamber. The truth of what's to come. No, you couldn't have. They'd be home screaming now if you did.
Alright, now this is actually quite interesting. I'm not entirely sure what the Hunter is referencing. I often thought that it's the short cutscene you receive after defeating the final Ethereal in the first XCOM game, as those Ethereals are also referenced to by the aliens as the Elders. However, as I mentioned at the beginning of this series, XCOM 2 is actually built upon the premise of us losing that first game, so perhaps this is referencing something that happened in that alternate timeline and was never shown in any of the games.
No one will call.
On Overwatch. Fire shots.
On Overwatch.
It's times like these I regret losing my humanity. The fear you are experiencing now must be so exhilarating. I almost wish we could switch places. Almost.
Right, one more bit of background info on the Hunter. Apparently he was once a human. I believe that was not yet officially revealed, but it does make sense considering that he's one of the Chosen. Now, our current situation on the battlefield, meanwhile, could get interesting, because if we just move our soldiers a bit further away from the door, we might be able to safely open it. By this point, it does unfortunately look like our enemies will not come through on their own. So we are making sure to break all possible lines of sight here and then have Dragonova open the door again. And as you can see, thankfully our enemies can spot no one. So let's make sure that Dragonova is not so easily revealed and then go on Overwatch. Okay, interestingly enough, all of a sudden our enemies do not seem to move at all. I think we'll have to see whether or not that persists.
So, what do you really think will happen if you win today? Planning to hop over to the Elder's ancient crypt, strike down the very gods, save humanity, and reclaim the world? Not on my watch.
Okay, so at this point, thankfully we can see in the background that the mechs have moved on, and I'm not willing to give up on these guys moving just yet.
Book says I am to obey.
Still, while they don't, let's get Dragonova a bit closer. The rest of the squad, meanwhile, can just once again shuffle around a bit, and eventually we finish the turn the way we always do.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Overwatch.
Right now.
Wait,
Okay, we hear some slight mechanical stomping in the background, indicating that the mechs are continuing to move. Unfortunately though, the same cannot be said for the Andromedon and their friends.
You are planning on actually fighting me today, aren't you? If not, could you please do me the courtesy and die already? The suspense is killing me.
Yeah, you and me both. I would like to get some action going here, but this is definitely one of those groups of enemies against which you want to grab every advantage you can get, so I suppose we'll play the waiting game for one more turn.
My watch
Come get some.
Bin dabei!
Scanning.
Okay, sadly still nothing, and as you can hear, or rather not hear, the Hunter has also given up talking. So yeah, we are definitely taking our sweet time with this one, but you can see it by the video length, there is plenty more still to come. So let's move up a bit with Dragonova, which gets her into Claymore range. I think that would be a good way to open things should we indeed have to engage them on our turn.
I see everything.
Scanning. Bitte Feuer!
Come get some.
And of course, with us getting ready to throw the Claymore, now the enemies start to move, well, I would say we are prepared for that. Thankfully, QT also the first to fire, unfortunately though at the shield bearer. Unfortunately though, the Andromedon is the first enemy to move into range for everybody else.
Not even close.
Their armor still holds.
Abgeprallt! Beim nächsten Mal treffe ich ihn.
On Van Dyke's shot then, we once again get the activation of Guardian, but unfortunately no further enemies come into range, and so we now have ourselves a rather interesting challenge here, I think. All 4 enemies are still standing, the Andromedon has tanked most of the damage, and both the Lancer and the Shield Bearer in the back over here have full cover and are fairly far away from our troops, so taking all of these enemies out in one turn could get tricky. Now, looking at all of these enemies, I think the Andromedon is the primary target, and we will be using QT's chain shot here to do as much damage as we can. The aim penalty brings the shot down to a 95%, but I think that's a risk that I'm comfortable with taking. The shot then also hits, once again applies holo targeting, and the second one is a critical, and all of a sudden the Andromedon no longer looks quite as threatening. To finish it off then, we will use Mox's Wrath Grapple. This has the added advantage of moving him a fair distance closer to the rest of the enemies.
Let's see, changing position.
I will always find
It is dead.
That leaves the Andromedon hull with 21 hit points, but like I said, Mox is now a lot closer to the rest of the group, and he has quite a few more tools at his disposal. The first one would be the free Whiplash action, and since the Andromedon shell is considered a robotic enemy, this will deal the full 12 points of damage if it hits. And it does hit, which means we can now follow it up with a free grappling action. This gives Mox even more movement to get into a flanking position and still preserves his last action, which we then use to let loose a guaranteed shot against the Lancer.
We must destroy their armor.
And it's a critical. Yes, that is why skirmishes are the kings of the action economy. Somehow Mox just moved halfway across the battlefield and still got off 3 attacks. Still, the situation is far from solved, even though Sapphire West is almost guaranteed to kill the Andromedon here.
X-ray neutralized.
And we did use Lightning Hands for this, so that we can now get off another shot at the Purifier, despite Alyssa already moving. Unfortunately, the 74%er here is a miss, but that's quite alright. I think I have a solution lined up. We can now move up Van Dyke, who can take out the Purifier guaranteed. Then we can follow that up with Starfall, who, uncharacteristically of him, just throws the Frost Bomb at the Shield Bearer. And then we can move Dragonova into a flanking position to take out the Lancer.
death to the invaders.
Right, so once again we played it very safely here. We definitely could have gone for a few non-guaranteed shots and perhaps taken out the shield bearer as well. But again, there is plenty more still to come and we don't need to risk anything. On the enemy turn then, the shield bearer remains frozen. We do hear some footsteps by the mechs in the background, but after taking a closer look we can see that they are comfortably far away. So let's go to work on the shield bearer and we use Mox, who is already in a flanking position. He's got two 96%ers and if he hits them both that should be plenty.
Their armor stands. Their casualties grow.
Alright, so that's another crit and a well-deserved promotion for Mox. He was actually lagging behind a bit in that regard. I think even Templar Logan is already a captain, so it's good to see that he's catching up. The loot meanwhile, a superior hair trigger and an advanced agility PCS. And don't worry, I will try to show off how powerful those high-tier hair triggers can be soon. So far we haven't really used them, but there are definitely some soldiers who could benefit tremendously from them. Dragonova then finds the next room empty, but there is definitely a device in the middle here that we could blow up with remote start. Only thing is, our enemies are nowhere close to it. So let's advance with the rest of the squad. I think we are safe to dash with a few soldiers here. Robotic enemies should not give us too much trouble, so I don't think it would be the end of the world if we do not get off a full round of Overwatches.
I have sight beyond vision.
Alright, on the enemy turn then we have movement, and that also re-establishes line of sight, thankfully though only with Dragonova, who can then also start off her turn moving a little bit closer. Okay, so we may not have received official confirmation yet, but the room ahead looks very much like it could be the Ascension Chamber we need to reach. Hidden in the shadows here, we can definitely spot what looks to be a zone we need to get to. A zone that could then perhaps also finally trigger the Hunter tube here, because let's not forget whose home this actually is, and so far our nemesis has remained suspiciously absent from the fight.
Reapers
On
are
over.
always
Got it
vigilant.
I'm on it.
After a full round of reloads, our enemies then keep moving, and that allows us to get closer as well. Certainly not by a tremendous amount.
As you command.
But should they now walk back the way they came, I think we're in a good position to engage.
I won't let
Moving
them
target.
Overwatch.
On Overwatch.
And indeed, it only takes a few steps until QT starts firing. So far, I have to say we have managed it nicely to have her apply holo targeting before the rest of the squad fires.
Armor still holding.
Unfortunately though, our Overwatches are as accurate as ever. At least Sapphire West hits hers, and thanks to blue screen rounds, even the pistol shot here does some good damage.
It hit the plate.
Right, so here we are. At this point I think you can also see it a lot clearer. We are indeed very close to reaching our objective. What exactly is going to happen once we step into the room or enter the marked zone, that is very much a mystery at this point. Don't worry though, we are just about to find out.
Absolutely.
Energy signature directly ahead. This appears to be an alien transport device of some kind.
Understood. Looks like we found our way out of here.
And yes indeed we have. The marked zone nothing more than a harmless elevator, and so we should be able to freely move around the room without anything unforeseen happening. To get us started though, we'll use QT's shredder gun because we are in a perfect position to do so. Just like the rocket launcher, we can only use it once per mission, but I doubt we'll find a better suited moment than this. The shredder gun only fires in a fairly narrow straight line, and we are definitely lucky to have 3 enemies standing right behind one another.
You're too close.
So yeah, this is what the shredder gun does. First it shreds all armor and then it applies the damage. So it's not like a regular grenadier shot with shredder, which would use the full damage range to determine how much armor is shredded and how much damage is then left over to be dealt to the health bar. So I think this goes to show just how powerful the shredder gun can be. Admittedly though, situations as convenient as this one rarely present themselves. Now, moving on, we are moving up with Sharpshooter Sapphire West, of course, making sure to keep a safe distance from the Purifier, and then we're going to use Face Off for the first time. From her current position, she can in fact target all 4 enemies, and as you can see, against 3 of them, hits are guaranteed. Right, no crit against the Purifier. 1 mag down. 2 mags down. And a hit against the Shield Bearer.
Multiple targets neutralized.
Alright, beautiful. The rest should now be easy. First, we can take out the Shield Bearer with a slash attack from Starfall. And Dragonova can once again remain in stealth mode as she takes out the Purifier.
Return to your god.
Right, good thing we kept our distance, I would say. And at this point, I think the map should be cleared. We did not fully explore that one room near the beginning where the 3 Vipers and the Spectre came out of, but since they came out of there, it is highly unlikely that a second group would have been hidden inside, and just considering how much time we actually spend in that area, we surely would have run into them.
It could explode at any time.
And yes indeed, at this point we get confirmation in the form of the alien activity overlay no longer being present, you know, that red bar at the bottom of the screen that usually appears as long as enemies are on the map.
Moving out.
Now, at the moment, our objective is very clearly to get all 6 of our soldiers onto the gate platform. However, before we do so, or at least before we send them wherever this goes, we might want to spend a turn or 2 just waiting. Suffice it to say, the mission is not over yet, and it might be beneficial to have all of our abilities recharged before we continue.
Cover me, I'm reloading.
Sometimes ability cooldowns are reset automatically once you transition from one zone to another during a mission, but since I am not entirely sure whether or not that's the case here, I would rather not risk it and find out that it's not. Eventually then, we have everyone on the platform, everyone's weapons are reloaded, and everyone's important abilities are usable again, so I think let's activate the Ascension Gate and find out what lies beyond.
Well done, Menace 1-5. See you on the other side. The belly of the beast now, people. Proceed carefully. What is that? Some kind of stasis chamber for the Chosen? No wonder they keep coming back at us despite everything we throw at them.
Finally, the real fight begins. See you soon.
Alright, this looks a lot more like we're actually going to meet the Hunter here. The mission objective also already reveals it. This thingy right here is the Hunter Sarcophagus, and we need to destroy it. Exactly how we go about doing that's a bit of a tactical challenge as well, and we'll get to that in a moment. For now, Reaper Dragonova has found some enemies to deal with first, an Andromedon and a heavy mech. Nothing too challenging for a 6-person squad, so let's set things up for the Overwatch. The other side of the room is also clear of hostiles, so at least for now, these 2 are the only ones we need to worry about.
Scanning.
Come get some.
Unfortunately then, they don't move on their turn, and being stuck all the way in the corner of the map here does not really make them easy to attack either, so let's just reposition a bit and wait for one more round.
Watching comes
Come get some.
It is under my watch.
After another turn of this, we can then move up with QT, who remains undetected as she heads into full cover and starts things off with a grenade.
Here, catch.
no place for you to go now.
This gets our enemy's attention, but unfortunately the Andromedon has moved into full cover and it remains pretty far away from the rest of the squad, although not far enough for Ranger Starfall, who can use run and gun to get into a flanking position up top and unleash 2 guaranteed hits with rapid fire.
I definitely got that one.
With the second one being a crit, that's already enough to bring out the shell, and that one does not benefit from cover, so Van Dyke has a guaranteed hit as well. And the same is true for Sharpshooter Sapphire West, but but it's unfortunately not enough for the kill. Mox meanwhile can take out the mech rather easily. And then we send our Reaper around to get the kill shot against the Andromedon.
Volk says hello.
So, at this point, the area is cleared and we will actually not see any reinforcements drop in until we proceed past a certain point in the room. And obviously, we do not want to do that just yet, especially since we have just used 2 valuable abilities in run and gun and rapid fire. So after grabbing the loot, which includes another perception PCS, we do not advance much further towards the Hunter Sarcophagus, but bring our squad up to the high ground. Taking control of the central platform here is absolutely essential in my opinion, not only because of the aim bonuses we get from here, but also because it is the most convenient way of crossing from one side of the room to the other. As you might be able to see underneath this platform, there is a bit of a hole in the ground that cannot easily be crossed. Now we are spending a few turns here reloading and waiting for rapid fire to be back off of cooldown. As you can see, once again time is very much on our side for this one. After dispatching this first group of enemies, the room is pretty much safe to use, again unless you traverse a certain threshold. However, now that we are ready, we will move forward, and we will do so with Grenadier QT. You'll see why in just a second.
Supposed to be here. You were never meant to figure out our little trick. Full of surprises, aren't you? Soon to be full of holes.
All right. We can do it again. No matter what happens today, only one side is leaving this place alive.
Finally.
Alright, here we are for the final showdown with the Hunter. Over the course of this series we have faced and defeated him numerous times, so we should be very familiar with what he can and cannot do.
You cannot run.
Alright, the Hunter has taken a position below the platform in full cover, and while we cannot destroy that cover, we can very much take care of the Hunter's armor.
The Elders have a special place in the void for those who betray them. It's full of so-called skirmishers.
And we'll do so with a grenade from Mox, a grenade that, because Mox is a skirmisher, will deal extra damage. Following that, we move in Reaper Dragonova and we move her in close to benefit from the brittle bonus, and then we unleash with Banish. All shots here are guaranteed to hit, and thanks to a superior expanded magazine we can take up to 6 of them, and that should be enough to take care of the Hunter's remaining 30 hit points.
Try that again. I dare you. I'll chalk that to beginner's luck. So, Reapers do know how to shoot. I suppose it's not bad for a human.
Good riddance.
Alright, that takes care of the Hunter, although as always, they are not dead just yet. This is now where the Sarcophagus comes into play.
Doctor, the device appears to be some sort of psionic capacitor, transferring tremendous amounts of psionic energy directly to the Chosen, restoring them.
No wonder these things don't die.
Okay, so as long as the Sarcophagus is still standing, the Hunter will receive healing, and as you can see in the top right corner, he has already regenerated 1/3 of his health, so we don't have a lot of time here. The Sarcophagus also comes equipped with a respectable 80 hit points that we should better remove over the course of this and the next turn, otherwise the Hunter will return at full strength, and as long as he is present on the battlefield, the Sarcophagus cannot be harmed. So here's how we're going to do this. Shooting the Sarcophagus is thankfully always guaranteed to hit, which means we can safely start things off with a chain shot from QT Lind. That already deals 16 points of damage, which we can then follow up with Ranger Starfall. First we use run and gun to get in close, then we throw the axe just for that extra bit of damage. and then we take 2 shots with rapid fire. Right, so at this point the sarcophagus is already down to almost half health, which once again goes to show how important it is to take out the hunter without wasting too many actions. And speaking of wasting actions, that is actually also why we are using the grappling hook to move up with Alyssa here, so that we can now still take 3 shots with her, 1 with lightning hands and then 2 regular pistol shots. That is enough to bring the sarcophagus down to 28 hit points.
Legen wir endlich los.
And we have one last soldier that hasn't acted yet, so to end our turn, let's take a shot with Van Dyke too.
I am a child of the gods. Servants will not leave me unattended.
Now at this point, as long as the hunter is inside of the sarcophagus, if you will, reinforcements will appear. In this case, we have a Spectre show up, although thankfully the version with only 16 hit points, and a mech is also summoned in and immediately goes on Overwatch. And, well, what can I say? For a squad that has 3 soldiers outfitted with blue screen rounds, this is about as convenient as it can get, because once again, if we do not destroy the sarcophagus on this turn, the hunter will be back at full health on the next one, and then we have to take them out again and send them back into the sarcophagus before we can destroy it.
Übernahme läuft.
So let's do this as quickly as we can. Van Dyke now benefits from the Skulljack after all, because having that equipped boosts his hacking stat up to a total of 145, and that is enough to have a guaranteed shutdown chance against the mech. So that's 1 enemy taken out with only 1 action, and the other one should not take more than 2, as Praetor Mox can fire twice and both shots are guaranteed to hit.
Service is over.
So that now leaves the rest of the squad to deal with the sarcophagus's 21 hit points, and I imagine this should not be too difficult. After 2 shots from Alyssa, we are down to 10 hit points, not quite enough for Cutie to get the kill shot here, but still. She deals max damage, and I think over the course of this series, Ranger Starfall has more than earned the right to deliver the final blow.
I'm hoping that's a good thing.
Yes, the regeneration process has been interrupted. Readings on the capacitor indicate it has become highly unstable.
Then let's target that Chosen with everything we've got.
So, at this point you can see it, the sarcophagus is not yet completely destroyed, but the Chosen's healing process has been interrupted. That will have certain consequences, which we'll see as we end our turn. Suffice it to say, the fight is not over yet.
I'll keep an eye on it.
The elders created you for this. Now it's time to prove your worth.
Alright, the hunter is back, but as you can see, not at full health. Instead, only 2/3 of his health bar are filled, which corresponds to the healing percentage displayed in the top right corner.
That wasn't supposed to happen. And just when I was starting to like you, you're the reason why this world can't have nice things.
So, this here is now the final showdown for good. As soon as the sarcophagus is sufficiently damaged, the hunter has no other choice but to reappear. Only this time, there is supposedly no sarcophagus to go back to, so we'll have to see what happens in that case. And let's go out on a high note here and do something fun with our Reaper. Let's move in with Dragonova and throw a Claymore at the hunter.
Soon our prey will fall.
And once it has been placed, we'll give Dragonova another action thanks to Starfall's teamwork.
We will overcome.
And we'll use that extra action to make use of the second Claymore we obtained at the last level up, so that the hunter now has 2 of them to worry about.
Wait.
Then we grapple into what might be an unexpected location with Mox, and with his first shot we'll have him start the fireworks. That brings the Hunter down to an almost pitiful 9 hit points, but we don't want to kill him just yet. Let's do this the completionist way and take out the mech before we do, as taking out the Hunter will immediately end the mission, and we can't leave any loose ends now, can we? So, QT takes care of the armor, Van Dyke adds 8 more points of damage with combat protocol, and that means Sapphire West has a guaranteed kill with her pistol.
Hostile terminated.
Don't worry about them. The Elders have plenty more to spare.
And, well, speaking of having things to spare, Mox does have one more action left, and I have to say it's awfully convenient that his designated nemesis has just enough hit points left to be a guaranteed kill with Wrath from up close.
Vengeance has come. Changing position. The light has left us.
And there we are, indeed with a rival silenced. This now takes care of the Hunter, and it does so permanently.
It wasn't easy, but we managed to pull it off, Commander. If only we could see the look on the Elders' faces.
Have to admit, didn't see this one coming. So, this is what it feels like to be afraid. Not my style.
So there we are. Once again, I had not expected this to be a flawless mission. But the Hunter is dead, we have unlocked ourselves another achievement, and we can now take on all missions in Hunter-controlled territory without having to worry about the Chosen showing up. I think it's a good thing that we brought some of our best for this one. Especially this final fight could have been much more tedious, but thanks to a few spectacular damage showcases it went pretty damn smoothly.
If it improves morale, then I suppose there is no harm in it.
All Advent gene therapy clinics will be closed tomorrow for equipment upgrades. Initial reports that the suspension of services were the result of dissident activity have been dismissed as radical propaganda.
We did it, Commander. That's the last we've heard from that Chosen. I don't know about peace, but at least it'll be quiet for a while.
Okay, so here we are back home, and you can see it, unsurprisingly after such a long mission, everyone but Van Dyke is tired. After participating in back-to-back missions, QT is even shaken, so she will now require a few days of rest. In the meantime, let's level up Mox, and we have 4 abilities to choose from here, starting with Combat Presence, which is basically a beefed up version of Teamwork. By spending one of Mox's actions, we can give an extra one to a teammate, and the best thing about it, this only has a 2-turn cooldown and can be used multiple times per mission. The question is how often you actually want to forgo one of Mox's actions in favor of somebody else, which brings us to the second choice, Retribution, basically the skirmishes version of Bladestorm. Unlike Bladestorm, however, even if this triggers, it still allows the enemy to get off an attack, which in my opinion does not really make it all that intriguing, especially if we also consider that Mox does not really have many other defensive abilities, so unlike with the Templar for example, having him stand out in the open is usually not the best way to go. So perhaps option 3 then, Interrupt, a much more powerful version of Overwatch, allowing Mox to take any action from his deep arsenal instead of just a simple reaction shot. Unfortunately, it can only be used once per mission, so you really have to anticipate when it might be useful, and as useful as it can be if triggered in the right moment, that moment happens on the enemy turn, and it is therefore not always easy to know when to best use this. That leaves us with the random XCOM ability, in this case Saturation Fire, consuming 3 rounds of ammunition to fire a cone-shaped barrage of bullets at any enemy in an area. It also has a moderate chance of destroying the cover these enemies are hiding behind, and it can even be used multiple times per mission, although it does have a 5-turn cooldown. Still, despite that, as well as the 25 AP price tag, I think it's the ability we're going with. The other way to unlock this ability would be with a Grenadier of the highest rank of Colonel, and I think we still have quite a way to go until we get one. The alternative, had we not rolled this, would have been Combat Presence I think, but who knows, collect a few more AP and we might get that one too after all. Now, the loot report for this mission is of the utmost importance, as killing the Hunter has just given us access to his weapons, the Dark Lance and the Dark Claw. One is a sniper rifle, the other a pistol, and they are both incredibly powerful, much more powerful than any weapon we could ever hope to manufacture ourselves. What exactly they can do, we'll find that out next time. Needless to say, our sharpshooters will become quite a bit more potent from here on out.
A glorious battle! Advent stands no chance against our combined might, Commander.
And yes indeed, the skirmishes have been freed from the Hunter's oppression, but of course we are still able to use the faction for resistance orders and covert actions, so they are very much still in the fight. We also get another reminder here that Cutie Lynch should take a few days off, but after her recent performances in the last 2 missions, I think she has earned the rest. And while we have earned ourselves a break as well, there is one more thing I would like to show you here today, and that is the short cutscene we get after heading back into the world map, now that the Hunter is no more.
Even now, we feel its absence. A voice, silenced forever. You are born of our power. Does not our very life force flow within your veins? We feel such loss. Yet within you we sense something else. Arrogance and emptiness. There can be only one explanation. You have succumbed to the failings of your humanity. You squander our gift to you. What was taken can be taken away. This is what awaits us all, should you fail. Return their commander to us while time yet remains. Leave us.
Alright, so the Elders are not exactly happy about what happened, but the Warlock and the Assassin are still very much in the fight.
Commander, the factions have readied proposals for various covert missions. We should head to the ring to plan our next op.
And indeed, this mission marked the end of a covert operation, which means we are now ready to launch another one. Let me quickly put the list of currently available ones up on screen right here. At the moment, there is nothing here that I think we desperately need to complete, but this is the last covert operation we can take this month. In 2 days the list will be re-rolled, so if there's anything here that strikes you as interesting, feel free to let me know in the comments. Personally, I think reducing Avatar Project progress would most likely be the safest bet, but we could also achieve that by attacking a few facilities. Unfortunately, there are plenty of them to choose from. So let me know what you think we should do here, and we'll get to it at the beginning of the next video. For today then, I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.